If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Today I have a beautiful chat with Mel, and Mel is a mum of a 10-month-old little baby girl, and she shares her experience with pregnancy, birth and recovery. So in this chat today, Mel describes her morning sickness, weight gain during pregnancy, pelvic girdle pain. She discusses being 10 days overdue and how she felt so sleep deprived in the last few weeks of pregnancy too. Look, I won't tell you everything, but Mel's story was one which included an induction, and it was a beautiful, positive story despite, the challenges that she came up against. So despite feeling so unwell and being so overdue and being induced, and things didn't go according to plan for her, but she does describe a beautiful experience. So I trust you're going to love this episode with Mel today. Before I do dive in, I'd love to invite you to come and trial Fitness Mama free for 7 days. If reclaiming your pelvic floor, core and strength safely is important to you, then you're going to love Fitness Mama. Perhaps you've found that you're not exercising as much as you'd like to during pregnancy and after birth. Perhaps you're busy, or you've lost the motivation, or you're not sure how to best be looking after your body. Perhaps you've got pelvic girdle pain and abdominal muscle separation, and you're not sure about the best exercises for you. Or you'd like to get back into running after birth and you want the best Kickstarter possible. Then Fitness Mama could be just what you need. Come and trial us. Free 7 days. Join us for these convenient, short, easy workouts that you can do from the comfort of your home whilst your bubba sleeps, your toddler runs around, or at the end of a long day at work. Just head to fitnessmama.com and the link is in the show notes. Right, let's dive into this episode. Mel, thank you so much for joining me today on the Fitness Mama podcast and offering to share your birth story. It is so lovely to connect. So thank you.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.
So tell us, Mel, let's start at the start. How was your journey to becoming pregnant?
So my husband and I, George, we got pregnant on the 4th month of trying consecutively. So we only missed 3 leading up to it. So pretty quick. So I'm 32 and he's 35 now. So we were in the not over 35 and not over the, if you've been trying for more than 6 months, you should seek some sort of assistance. So we didn't have to wait too long, which was good.
And how did you find those 4 months? How were you feeling?
Even though I knew, the chances of it happening month 1 were low, like I think it's 20% or less than 20%, I was still pretty disappointed looking at the negative pregnancy tests at months 1, 2, and 3. And even when I was pregnant, I'd taken a few pregnancy tests over a few days. And, they were negative, and then eventually there was a week positive. But yeah, even though I was pregnant then, I didn't think I was.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny. I was getting my second COVID jab and I'd taken one right before going in and it was negative. And they ask you when you go to the center, are you pregnant? And I was like, nope. And got the shot, had a few drinks with dinner that night. And that was a Friday. And then Saturday, didn't get my period. I thought, oh, Sunday, didn't get my period. I'm like, no, surely not. And took a test and there was a week positive. I'm like, oh, you're kidding. Hopefully that was okay having, getting the shot and, can't take those drinks back. But, oh, well, it is what it is.
Yeah. And I can imagine all that, like with the 4 months preceding that, and then you did your pregnancy test. It was a bit of a surprise, is that right? To then find out you're pregnant?
Definitely. And it's funny because I'd been really disappointed looking at all of the negatives previously. And then it was actually positive and I went into shock. I was like, oh no, what do I do? This is real. And I was not feeling bad, but just feeling overwhelmed, I suppose. And, I showed George and he was just ecstatic. He was so happy. And then I felt kind of bad that I didn't feel so happy and hormones.
Yeah. So what was going through your mind then?
Just sort of like, okay, this is real. This is happening. And all of the information about being pregnant has to, come into effect right now. And yeah, it was amazing and scary and everything all at once. But yeah.
And what was one of the first few things? What did you do that day? Do you remember? Did you just go back to work and pretend like?
Well, it was a Sunday, so I was I'd only been a few days past my expected period, so it was 4 to 5 weeks pregnant, and didn't want to tell anyone at that very early stage. So went into work the next day as, business as normal pretty much. And it wasn't until about 6 weeks that I started getting morning sickness. And so I told a close friend who I worked with, but I didn't tell anyone else yet.
And how was that morning sickness? How long did it last for? How did it affect you?
It lasted about until 14 weeks and I needed medication. So we moved house when I was 6 weeks pregnant, which was poor timing, but what can you do? Unfortunately, I couldn't help move. So, that was a good way out. But I also had a really rough time for, what's that, another 8 weeks. So, yeah. And because I had to miss a lot of work, I sort of had to come clean and be like, okay, look, this is what's going on. This is why. And we're just going to have to work around that. But that was fine.
And how did they take the news?
Oh, they were thrilled. Yeah. Really, really supportive, which was nice.
So as your pregnancy progressed, at what stage did you start to think about preparing for birth and how did you go about that?
Probably straight away. I basically wanted to become as informed as possible. So I was looking up at heaps of, webinars, podcasts, any sort of free information that I could get, I tried to get. So I think the first podcast that I listened to was the Kick with Bridget and Pat Maloney, and from there got Fitness Mama and a few others. And so I was just listening to all of them as they came out. And so I'd actually I think I was listening to them before getting pregnant. So I already had a bit of information to start off with, which was good.
This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply. That's great. And did you go ahead and do anything else to help prepare your body for birth or prepare for birth? Any courses?
Physically? No, I didn't do any in-person classes or anything like that. No.
Do you feel the podcast gave you enough, or did you just feel you didn't need it?
Yeah. I'm not that sort of social, go out and, participate in those sort of classes. I'm, introverted, and that's just not in my comfort zone. And I thought, no, I don't think I need it. I think I can get enough information, and, I can talk to my healthcare provider and we can go from there.
So talk me through your pregnancy journey. You've told work, you're starting to listen to podcasts. How did your pregnancy journey transpire?
So after 14 weeks, it was really good. The second trimester was lovely. I felt on cloud nine. But unfortunately, I'd gotten out of the routine of exercise. So I used to go for a walk every morning, and then we moved quite far away from where I worked. And so coupled with the morning sickness, I didn't feel like going out in the morning, and I was pretty time poor in the mornings anyway. And by the time I felt better, I was out of the habit. And so I really let things slide with my physical health and diet as well. I was eating pretty rubbish food, which I wouldn't do again. I'd be more disciplined going around again, because I actually gained about 25 kilos over the course of my pregnancy, and my baby was 4.2 kilos. So she was still a decent part of that, plus, the placenta, the fluid, but most of that was me, which, wasn't very good. But in the second semester, I was feeling amazing. Come the third trimester, I gained some weight, hadn't been exercising, and then all of a sudden had lots of pain. So pelvic girdle pain, just the physical weight of my belly. And when I was at work, just getting up and sitting up in the chair, getting in and out of the chair to go to the printer or go to walk down the lab was getting really hard towards the end. I started maternity leave at about 36 weeks. Yeah. And even with, what I thought was 4 weeks to go, it was, really hard to get around.
That's sorry to hear. It's never fun to have pelvic girdle pain. I 100% understand. Did you manage to see anyone or
no
get any sort of treatment?
I should have. I thought I could just sort of push through. I just thought once the baby comes, I won't have this big weight, and I can sort of, try and do some gentle exercises to get back into, a sort of state of normal, I suppose, which did happen. Post-birth felt almost back to normal, which is, really lucky. But towards the end of pregnancy, I was not having a good time. And then I was 10 days overdue. So I was really not having a good time.
Okay, talk us through that last week or last 2 weeks.
Oh, I was very miserable. I was actually worried towards the end that I was going to resent my baby when she came out on a genuine level, because I hadn't been sleeping well for probably the last 2 months of pregnancy. I had pregnancy rhinitis, so I couldn't breathe properly through my nose, and I was tossing and turning pretty much every 30 minutes. I had, a big C-shaped pregnancy pillow, and then I had another pillow between my legs to, keep my legs in a straight line. And it's really hard to flip over, to keep a pillow between your knees and flip over when you're enormous. and tired. And, I had terrible sleep towards the end. Yeah. And so I was just like, after my due date came, I was so anxious. I was like, it could be today. And, it's almost never on your actual due date. But when the due date came and went, I was really upset. And then it was just a super long waiting game. And at 41 weeks, went to have my checkup. And I was like, induce me, please. I cannot do this anymore. So, yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah. So it was a lack of sleep, you're achy, you're sore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what did your doctor say?
The midwives were fully in support of that. I think they had a policy. It was, I can't remember exactly how many days, but it was 41 plus 3 maybe. That's like sort of their policy. They won't induce you before then, just in case you go into natural labor. That's spontaneous labor. But yeah, I was pushing them for as early as possible because I had it. Yeah.
So they booked you in
for
41 plus 3 or whatever it was?
Yeah. So, that's when she was bought 41 plus 3. So it was the day before, that I went into hospital, had the balloon catheter inserted. And, the next day I started the drip. And at the end of that day, she came out.
You make it sound so easy.
It wasn't easy, but I guess it's simple.
Okay, well, talk us through how you found that process. Like, I'm sure a lot of mums listening will want to know exactly, what happened, how did you feel, how did you cope, and all that sort of thing.
Well, my birth preferences were very different to how my birth transpired. So I wanted to labour at home for as long as possible. I'd made a labour playlist that I wanted to, bop along to. I wanted to, be dancing around in the living room and having, the smallest contractions and, having the time of my life. I also wanted to be in water as much as possible. So whether that was getting like a kiddie pool or something, I really love water and feel relaxed in water. So I thought, I want to have water. But the hospital that I went to, they don't do water births. So that was out. And I could have gone to a different hospital like 45, 50 minutes away, but didn't really want to, be that far just in case something happened. So I live in Balan and I went to Ballarat. So that was already a 3 minute drive as it was. So yeah, was already, far-ish, just in case something happened, but luckily nothing happened. But so that was how I wanted birth to go. And I didn't go into labor spontaneously. So I didn't get to labor at home. And because I was induced, they recommended continuous monitoring. And you can be in the shower with that attached. I forgot what it's called actually, the little doodad that they strap on. And you're in the shower, but you can't be submerged. So sitting in the pool was out. And I had to start labor in the hospital. And that idea of being in hospital sort of wasn't great. I didn't hate it because I thought a hospital is a good place to be for me, in case of emergency. It's good to have healthcare professionals on hand. But at the same time, I don't want to feel stressed. I want to feel relaxed, and I'll feel more relaxed at home. So, yeah. But I had George, my husband, there the whole time from me walking into hospital to get the catheter in. Yeah, he went home that night, but he came back very early the next day and he stayed all day and all night, which was really good. That made it, really supportive, because if he wasn't there and I was just alone in hospital, that would have sucked.
And how did you feel that first night?
Pretty anxious and pretty uncomfortable because the catheter that they insert, I think there were 3 sort of cables that hung, past your vulva, and they sort of strapped to your leg. And so it's really awkward, peeing. And the whole thing's sort of not comfortable anyway. And I think there were mild contractions because I had to go from 0 to 3 centimeters. And that didn't really take effect until late that day. But I was also, it started at about 9 o'clock and I was just sitting around basically waiting until the next day when they would do a check to see if I dilated any further than that, which I didn't. I only got to 3. And so they started the drip a few hours after that. But I was also excited, like, okay, it's finally happening. At least it's not going to be too much longer. I don't know how long labor will last, but at least something's happening and that's good.
And so once they started the drip, how did things change?
Pretty slowly at first, because I wanted the chance to see if I would go into labor spontaneously, because one of the other, not podcasts, but like childbirth videos that I was watching sort of was an advocate of if you can, go into labor spontaneously, great. And even if you're being induced, you have the right to defer or, you have the right to not be on, the drip if you're not comfortable with it. And sometimes sometimes you can go into labor spontaneously after they break your waters. So as it happened, the doctor couldn't come for 2 hours anyway. So I got that 2-hour window, whether I wanted it or not. And I obviously didn't. But that was, that was okay. So at about 11, I think they started the drip. And at 9:25, she was born.
So your drip went in at about 11:30?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So what happened then? How did things change?
It's very slowly at first. I think, I can't even remember what time the first real contraction was. The whole day was a bit of a blur. But it was pretty slow and cruisy at first. Then obviously the contractions intensified. And so my pain management was gas initially. And I felt that didn't really do much. And it sort of made me feel a bit nauseous, not too bad. But yeah, I wasn't really keen. But early on, I didn't need a lot of help anyway. So that was fine. And then things progressed and I was like, okay, let's go to the next stage. And I had morphine, which was great for about 2 hours. And then, didn't really help thereafter. But I think I actually napped at some point during morphine for like 15 seconds or something. I had these really weird dreams. And then, these contractions would like wake me up. I'm like, no.
A little power nap.
Yeah.
And then from the morphine, at what stage was that? What time was it that you had the morphine?
I think it was about 4 o'clock.
Okay, so 5 hours to go.
Yeah. And so that gave me, I think, about 2 hours of relief. And then it wasn't, I think they were going to offer it 4 hourly, depending on when you were, like how far along you were. If you were about to start pushing, then they'd say no. But I think they wouldn't administer anything prior to 4 hours. So I can't remember how far along I was, but I had 1 hour of pushing. So at 8:30, I was fully dilated anyway. So I just had one dose of morphine, and then they gave me some like anti-nausea drugs as well. The nurse the night before, though, put the cannula in my elbow because the veins in my hand were no good. And I was doing a lot of, grabbing and like leaning forward. And so my arm was always kinked and the machine kept beeping all the time because there wasn't a clean line. And the midwives in the room like, oh, can you maybe try straightening your arm? I'm like, shh, leave me alone. This is what's comfortable. Like, yeah, we're going to need to move your arm though. But by the end of the day, I was just didn't want to be moved. So everything was sort of hurting. And it was the moving, whichever way I was, being moved was very painful. And yes, all day my elbow was kinked. And yes, this machine just drove me crazy. So next time I'll make sure they get my hand. I will insist they get my hand so that I am free to move.
Gosh, it's amazing those small things, how they can make a difference.
Didn't even factor into my head the night before when they put it in. I was just like, oh yeah, elbow, that's where the good veins are. Go for it.
Yeah, right. So you're talking about how your morphine was pretty good, but in those last few hours and when transition happened, like what were some of the best strategies you were using that you found really helpful to manage it all?
Well, so the strategies that I wanted to use were to keep moving, to keep active. There was a gym ball and I sort of wanted to sort of jiggle around on that and keep my like pelvis nice and wide. And I wanted to do that, but that hurt. I actually booked a TENS machine, but the pain was always in my front. It was never in my back. So I didn't even open it because there was no point. It wasn't going to help me. And the same, not that I would have chosen the sterile water injections, but again, it wasn't in my back. So that wouldn't have helped either. The midwives told me that it's worse if the pain's in your back. So, be thankful it was in your front, which didn't really do much to console me at the time. It still hurt, but, I could have hurt a lot more, I suppose.
Interesting. Because the TENS machine, even though your pain might be at the front, it's more the distraction.
Yeah.
So you're noticing those funny pins and needles tingly sensation in your back, which sort of distracts you from the pain at the front. So the pain doesn't necessarily have to be at your back for it to be effective.
I probably should have opened it then, but next time.
Next time.
That's all right.
Okay. And I know the transition, can you remember when you went into transition?
It's all foggy. I think the morphine was in effect then. So no, I don't really remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember when you first felt that urge to push?
Yes. I said, I think I need to poo. And they're like, let's just check because, maybe you don't need to. And I was like, oh, no, I'm pretty sure that's what I need to do. And no, they're like, okay, yep, you're ready to start pushing. And so, yeah, it was an hour of pushing, which they told me was pretty quick. Usually it's, 1.5 or 2 hours. It didn't feel quick, not at all.
Yeah. And in what way did it not feel quick?
Oh, it was just so painful. And so I felt like that I couldn't get past this threshold. It's like I kept pushing whenever I felt this urge to push, as well as the midwife saying, okay, go now. And then, give me everything, push really hard or just push a bit, depending on, I guess, the contraction. But I felt like I would sort of push to a certain part, but I couldn't keep going. It would just sort of fall back down. And then eventually, I guess once her head came through or once we got to a certain point, I was able to like push further. But yeah, I don't know why, but I think I had it in my head that once I had the urge to push, it would sort of happen. I don't know. I thought my body would sort of do that. And, obviously eventually it did, but it just felt like I really wasn't getting there. And it was kind of scary in a way because I thought, is this actually going to end? Is she going to need to be cut out? And it was only an hour. It's just, it's crazy how things feel in the moment. It feels like it never ends, but really the whole day was pretty quick. It did end.
And what were they saying to you, your team, your health care team?
They were great. I was saying like all day, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, yeah, you can. You're fine. You're doing it. Yeah, they were amazing. They were so chill and supportive and like business as usual. So they were really, really helpful. I'm really fortunate because some friends of mine didn't have a good support team at hospital. So I was sort of wary about that. And leading up to birth, I'd made all of my preferences clear to George so that he could advocate on my behalf. So I felt, in really good hands with him and with the team. So, and I knew that they were in support of all of those things as well. So that was really good. I did say at some point in the day, I think I want a cesarean. I think I don't want to keep pushing. They're like, no, you don't. Nah, you're not there yet. You're fine. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So you mentioned George was a big help. Looking back, what were some of the ways where he was the biggest help? Like, what did he do? How did he help you?
Being a distraction, and someone to hold my hand and let me squeeze his hand and shatter his bones. I feel kind of bad actually during the end of pushing, or crowning. It wasn't enough to just squeeze his hand anymore. I had him basically in a headlock. So I was lying on my back on the bed, and I had my arms around his neck, and I was just like crushing him. And so he missed seeing her come out. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But I really needed that. So that's good.
Yeah, and tell us about that last push. Like, do you know it was going to be your last couple of pushes? Like,
well, they told me like, oh, we can see her head, and her head's out. Her shoulders got stuck. They didn't need any instruments. They just a doctor came in and she sort of just scooped her shoulder out. So it wasn't serious, but they did say, okay, her shoulder's stuck. This is what's happening. And I don't know how long that took. I'm guessing not very long. But she was out and she was fine.
And how did you feel when she came out?
So good. So good. Yeah, they put her on my chest straight away, and it was just lovely. And I didn't feel any resentment whatsoever. I was just flooded with all of those feel-good hormones. And it was amazing. She stayed there until after the placenta was out. So at least an hour she didn't leave my chest, I don't think. And then she had skin to skin with George as well, so that I could get up and try peeing for the first time. And oof, that was not fun. That stung. Oh my God. That stung for weeks actually, but definitely stung the first time.
So George had her beautiful skin to skin. What stage did you try your first breastfeed?
Oh, straight away. As soon as she was out and on my chest, she was, sucking. I'd been expressing colostrum from about 36 weeks. So I already had like a esky full of syringes to give her as well. But she started sucking straight away, which was good.
That's great. How did it feel?
Yeah, pretty good. I don't remember how long it sort of took to toughen up, like the nipples to toughen up. But it was, we had like a pretty good latch, and she was a pretty good drinker. I did get mastitis twice from 8 to 10 weeks, and I went to hospital for it, which was not fun at all. I basically slept through one feed, and that's all it took. But apart from that, it was great.
And what happened after you slept through that one feed? Yeah,
so my breast was my right breast. It was full and it was lumpy, but it felt sort of full and lumpy at other times. And then she fed and it was, drained the breast and it was fine. But there were these lumps that I couldn't push out, I couldn't express, and she couldn't suck out either. And so I was seeing a lactation consultant a few times. I tried talking to someone from the Australian Breastfeeding Association and looking up online, talking to the maternal child health nurse about tips to unblock ducts. I didn't find that any of them were effective. So I was on oral antibiotics for a couple of weeks, and then went to hospital for IV antibiotics as well. And then eventually went away.
And how were you feeling in your body? Like what made you need the antibiotics? Did you have a fever?
I had a fever. I was feeling really rotten. I felt like the flu basically, but without the, runny nose and stuff. yeah, I felt awful. So the antibiotics helped eventually, but they didn't actually clear the duct. So I actually saw a physio and she did some lymphatic massage as well.
Mm-hmm.
That and just hot showers, just trying to like manually press, like massage and, knead out the lumps. Eventually, yeah, they went away. But I had ultrasounds and they didn't find anything except just a sack of milk, which, yeah.
And how was parenting and, feeding a newborn when you were feeling like this?
Oh, awful. Because you have to feed on that side first before you can feed on the other side. I was also using a nipple shield early on because I had, really sore nipples as well. That and like nipple cream. So it was pretty painful, but it was probably until the mastitis cleared up after 10 weeks that I didn't need the shield anymore and everything felt just much more painless. And it's felt like that ever since.
And talk us through your recovery from a physical point of view.
Yeah. So
and mental, if you want.
Sure. Yep. The pelvic girdle pain seemed to disappear. So I feel like I could move much more comfortably. Being able to sleep at night was so comfortable. I remember the first time I lied on my stomach. I didn't even like do it to go to bed. It was like the middle of the day. I was like, I just want to lie down. Oh, this feels so good. I haven't been able to do this in months. This feels amazing. And same with lying on my back because I was a back sleeper. And after 20-ish weeks, whenever the recommendation is that you don't sleep on your back, I didn't sleep on my back, which was another reason I couldn't sleep comfortably. So I did that too. I'm like, oh, this feels amazing. But what did I do? I went for like 5-minute walks for the first week and then
amazing. Well done.
Yep. I remembered. And then another 5 minutes for each week subsequently. So yeah, that was really good. It was just nice and gentle and it was really nice like taking her in the pram for walks as well. So George, he was on leave for 6 weeks all up, but obviously missed those first 2 because I wasn't ready. So he was home for 4 weeks, which was really good for, being able to change her in the night so that I could sleep for a little bit before needing to feed her. He would, make us breakfast in the morning and so that I could sit and that was really good. So physically recovery wise, I think I felt really good. I did have abdominal separation, but it was only 1 or 1.5 centimeters. So that was fine. I got that checked at my 6-week postpartum check. I didn't have any ongoing leakage. So for the first few weeks, I was bleeding a lot, but in still a normal way. And sometimes I would wee as well, but that only took a few weeks to clear up. But I still had pain while urinating for several weeks. And I tried like a squeezy bottle of water and it helped a bit, I guess, but it still stung. Yeah, that part wasn't so great. I remember hearing that people would say that the first poo was really bad. I'm like, that's fine. I didn't have any problems with that. I had heaps of fiber just in case. But the burning was quite painful. And for the first couple of weeks, it felt like pushing. It was really, really painful. But I talked about it to the nurses that checked up on me and they're like, yeah, it's normal. So I had a 1st-degree tear and had some stitches that dissolved. That all healed fine and that didn't give me any trouble.
And did you have a pelvic floor assessment?
Not an internal one, but I think that I can't really remember what she did, but I tried doing some pelvic floor lifts and they assessed that it was pretty good, just some, minor exercises to keep practicing thereafter. And so I was really good at doing my pelvic floor exercises during pregnancy because it was habit whenever I was driving to work to do them in the car. And then I wasn't driving in the car anymore. And so I was out of the habit of doing them when I needed to do them the most, really. So I was a little bit slack there. I was also a little bit slack with my abdominal separation exercises too. But I did them. I just didn't do them as often as I probably should have. But I felt fine. I didn't feel like I couldn't sit up or anything like that. And I didn't have any leakage after the bleeding stopped, which was probably about 6 weeks postpartum.
Well, with pelvic girdle pain, if you've had it for your first pregnancy, you are perhaps more likely to have it for your second pregnancy. But the good news is postnatal rehab and getting yourself stronger in this interim period can help to reduce your risk second time around.
Yeah.
So it's not too late to get started.
I know what to do for next time. So, yes. And I also know what to expect for next time, which also helps.
Amazing. So looking back on it all now, you're a few months down the track. Life feels like it's getting back to normal. What would you say to someone who's pregnant now, who's listening today, in terms of, just in hindsight, like how you have found everything, any lessons or any words of wisdom that you want to pass on?
Yep. So I think try and get as much information as possible. Try and know about different types of births, like instrumental births, like that. That part always really scared me, like forceps. That, like, I really didn't want that to happen, and luckily it didn't. But it would have been so much worse if I had no idea what those instruments were and all of a sudden they were necessary, and that would have just been really scary. So try and get as much information as possible, and try and get as much sort of practical, especially for birth, advice or tips. So like I had all of these positions sort of mapped out in my head of, okay, I'm going to sort of be on all fours and I'm going to, push my calves in, knees out, or vice versa, whichever one opens up the pelvis. And I'm going to do that. And then obviously in the moment, moving hurts. I'm like, no, I don't want to go there. I want to stay here where it's comfy. But luckily the midwives were like, okay, but this is probably going to make you feel better. So how about we just try this? And I deferred to them because I was sort of too preoccupied with that hurts, leave me alone, rather than, okay, but this might hurt less once you're there, which it did. So and have a clear idea of what you're okay with and what you're not, and make sure that you advocate for that. So if you've got a support person, make sure that you're on board and they're on board.
Love it.
Yeah.
Great pieces of advice. And on a different topic, it's your daughter's, you were saying on off air, it's your daughter's first day at childcare. Is that what you said?
Second day, but first long day.
Proper day.
This is the longest I've been away from her. And so
how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, I go back to work on Monday, so I'm not feeling that great. I wish that I could just stay at home forever with her. I'm really gonna miss that. But I know that she'll be fine. She'll love it there. It's just me who's a little bit weepy.
Oh, I definitely remember getting back into my car that first day I left my daughter and just bawling my eyes out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yesterday I slipped away and she didn't notice that I was gone, and I was only going for 2 hours, so I didn't really think too much about it. But today I sort of passed her to a carer and she waved at me as I was walking out the door. I'm like, oh, okay, don't cry.
Was she crying?
No, she was happy. But I didn't want to leave her. I thought, I need to go now just in case I want to go back and give her a cuddle, and then she realizes I'm going and then does start crying.
Yeah.
It's possible that as soon as I closed the door, she was devastated. A part of me likes to think so. Hopefully she misses her mum. But no, she'll be fine.
Yeah, it's a huge transition, going back to work, starting childcare, and not easy.
No.
It's
but we'll get
a whole
there.
New world.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going back part-time, so it'll be a transition. So I'm doing 3 days a week, so I'll still get 2 days with her at home, which is good.
Yeah. And what do you do for work?
I work at a seed testing laboratory in admin. It sounds more exciting than it is. Well, for me,
what type of seeds?
Everything. So like for cropping, for quarantine, seeds coming into Australia, they get tested through us before getting released. And yeah.
Yeah, wow. There you go.
Something different.
Absolutely. Well, Mel, thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's like overall, well, you'd say you had a pretty good birth experience, right?
Yes, it was definitely positive, especially considering that, I was 10 days overdue. I had 3 different due dates. So I had my first missed period, like that date, and then I had 2 dating scans, and all 3 gave different dates. So I was 10 days past the latest date. So part of me was thinking, I might go into labor at like 38 weeks, because that was pretty much one of my due dates. No, of course not.
Yeah. And I just love the fact that you did have a positive birth experience despite being 10 days over, despite having to be induced. Yeah, so it's nice to hear that story. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. I appreciate you taking the time out on one of your last few days before you go back to work.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. We'll catch you soon.
Okay, take care. Bye.
That's it, ladies. Remember, before I sign off, my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to access a free 7-day trial of Fitness Mama. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer: materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'll see you soon.